All right, so today I want to start by talking about this story at a Western Standard, and it's titled Trump Approves $22 billion railway between Alaska and Alberta. Now, whether or not this goes through, I'm not sure if Justin Trudeau can have something to say about this or if it's just a provincial thing, but nonetheless, it's a good thing. And I mean, the first thing to point out too is, Trump's doing more to help out Alberta than Justin Trudeau is. And it's like I always mention too. I'm not a huge fan of Trump, and I don't really like hating on Trudeau all the time. The problem is Trudeau's giving you every reason to hate on him, and Trump lately has been giving you mostly reasons to, praise him, right? In that, he's going after this stupid, critical race theory, social justice garbage, um, and whatnot, and doing stuff like this is also well, again, and this is something that's going to improve Alberta. It's going to create jobs. And what has the federal Liberals done? Like literally nothing. Their solution is let's just throw a bunch of solar panels and wind turbines down south. That's what the Liberals' plan for Alberta is, which isn't going to do anything, right? It's going to marginally increase our energy output from renewables, and it'll create a handful of jobs which will quickly disappear. Um, and it's not going to benefit anyone in the long run either. Like in the long run, it doesn't benefit anyone. So that's pretty much the Liberals' plan for Alberta, and yeah, they're really not doing a whole lot. So anyway, this is kind of the first thing I wanted to bring up, and like I say, it's good that Trump's doing stuff like this. Let's hope that it goes through, because that would definitely benefit both us and Alaska, right? So yeah, that's some good news for once lately. This is from Spencer Fernando, and he says politicians were glad to shut down the economy and completely reshape our lives, yet they have no problem calling elections if they see a chance to increase their power. They don't care about us. And again, it's a very good point in that I don't think that there's much difference between either side when it comes to this kind of stuff. Politicians really don't care about you. The goal is to increase power. Like you look at the Liberals right now. Um, if they thought that they would, if they called an election, that they would come out of said election with a majority, do you honestly think that they wouldn't be pushing for it more than they are? Which they kind of giving mixed signals with it. Of course they would, right? Like, of course they would. But since the whole We scandal and the fact that the Canadian economy's been hit even harder than most other um, G7, G20 countries, they're probably not going to do it. And the other reason being the NDP. I mean, the NDP are kind of the epitome of this, right? In that this would be a prime opportunity for the NDP to force an election to try and gain more seats because even if they ran a half decent campaign, they would. The problem is that they're in so much debt they can't afford it right now. Again, like typical leftist fashion, they're in so much debt they can't afford it. It's funny how that works. Um, but again, he's referring to the provincial elections, but still, I'm talking about a more just from a more federal perspective, and it's very telling. I mean, BC is going to the polls as well. I believe it was one of the eastern provinces just had one. Um, so again, it's all about power. Like it's all about power when it comes to this kind of stuff. I mean, the same thing goes for the whole lockdown thing. The lockdowns, I don't think could definitively be proven to work less well than they did. There's no evidence whatsoever they worked, but yet you have governments still pretending like this is this massive issue, and the only way to get past it is lockdowns and restrictions and all these garbage laws. I mean, look at Doug Ford too. Like, I mean, I always harp on the left, but Doug Ford, obviously being a conservative, I think he's done a terrible job handling this, and I've been saying that for months. Like, I've been saying that pretty much from day one. They're way too authoritarian and stringent when it comes to the lockdowns. Um, the actual cases, I mean, they're acting like cases is what's dictating how bad this kind of stuff is when the cases are up, but the deaths are still down, right? So Doug Ford, yeah, he's done a terrible job handling this whole situation. And I mean, personally, I think he's just he's a moderate. He could have easily ran as a liberal, in the 2000s or in the 90s, and I don't think anyone would have questioned it. But yeah, the point being is, Doug Ford, terrible job. The Liberals, terrible job. I don't know if there's hardly anyone I can think off the top of my head that's handled this really well. Even UCP in Alberta, I think, have done a pretty brutal job as well. But it's consistently for the same reason. Like, it's consistently for the fact that we overreacted to this situation, and they may always make the argument of, oh, at the time we had no way of knowing, but we've known for months. Like, we've known since May that the lockdowns don't work, but yet did any of the governments, in late April be like, yeah, the lockdowns clearly have no effect on the spread, or at the very least a minuscule effect. We're gonna just end things. No, none of them did that. They're told we're gonna slowly wean ourselves out of this, and 4 months later, we're still not weaned off. I mean, in Ontario, they're hardly moved, right? I think a lot of places are still in stage 2, which I don't even know what that is for Ontario, but still, they've hardly moved. And is the government admitting they're wrong? Well, of course not. They'll never admit they're wrong. I mean, unless like 90-95% of the public demands it, but that's never going to happen considering how dumb the average person is. So the next thing, from Charlie Kirk. Louisville just declared a public state of emergency before an announcement about Breonna Taylor's case. If you have to declare a state of emergency in anticipation of an announcement, you're not actually dealing with peaceful protesters, you're dealing with violent extremists. Now, this happened a week ago, but I wanted to talk about it nonetheless, in that, not necessarily about this specifically, but we're at the point these days to where um, we decide government policy and all this kind of stuff not based off a reasonable standard, reasonable justifications, whatever you want to talk, tell, innocent until proven guilty. No, we're at a point to where we have to walk on eggshells and deal with a mob-like crowd that if they don't get their way, they're going to violently riot and loot. And I mean, is there some peaceful protesting? Absolutely, but I mean, there's literally been billions of dollars in damages done. I think that the death count from these protests is in like the 50s or the 60s at this point. So the idea that these are mainly peaceful is absolute insanity, and anyone suggesting otherwise is just lying. You don't do billions of dollars in a largely, billions of dollars of damage in a largely peaceful protest. You don't kill 50, 60 people over a period of a few months, with a largely peaceful protest. And that's not even including the amount of injured people, right? Like, there's literally been probably into thousands of people that have been injured, in these protests. So the idea that they're peaceful is absolutely insane. Does that mean that they're all violent? No. But the idea that it's vast majority peaceful, like these liberal or left leaning outlets would have you think, is complete bunk. Like, it's complete bunk. Um, and yeah, like the point I made too, that we no longer live in a just innocent until proven guilty legal system. We don't live in that anymore, because we're at the point to where when it comes to these kind of things, either the mob gets their way in lynching innocent people, and it is literally, I mean, not literally, but very close to lynching innocent people, and that, innocent police officers must go to jail, or innocent, the guy in Wisconsin, or was it Wisconsin? The guy, no, he was in um, Omaha, I think. The guy that, defended himself and, ended up, being charged and, killing himself because of that. Like, stuff like that is absolute, so sad and insane that stuff like that's going on. But again, we're at the point where, innocent people must suffer, or we're going to. I mean, from these people's perspective, it's. I mean, they don't think they're innocent, but by definition of the law, they are innocent, right? Like, these cops in every one of these cases is innocent. I mean, George Floyd, you could maybe argue that they slight misconduct. Maybe, I think you could argue, but they're not guilty of murder. They're not guilty of any crime that should have them end up in jail. None of these cops are guilty of any crime that should have them end up being in jail. And there's no debate on that at this point. Like, literally every one of these prominent cases has been proven at this point. George Floyd definitively proven, Breonna Taylor definitively proven. Um, I mean, you look at the one in Kenosha, you look at the one in Atlanta. I mean, a lot of these cops are going to end up in jail, but not because they're guilty, because if they don't end up in jail, the mob will riot and loot, and hell, they're showing up to people's houses. Like, this is the other thing I can't stand too. They're pretending, oh, Black Lives Matter isn't a political movement. Well, why in the world are they showing up to people's houses? Specifically, many of these cases, Trump supporters. Like, I don't think you could be more political if they tried. Like, seriously, like, I'm not sure. I mean, if they did try, they could make it more political, but the fact that multiple Trump supporters have been violently attacked, one of them, I mean, multiple ones killed, I believe now. They're showing up to people's houses and threatening them. Like, at what point is it going to be political if it isn't already? Like, I don't get it. So, anyway, the last thing I wanted to bring up is from Kian Bexty. And he says, here's a letter from a Calgary doctor saying they are fed up with the austere, evil, conservative government and moving. I'm sure this political tantrum has nothing to do with the fact that they regularly donate thousands of dollars to the NDP. I'm sure they're genuine. Now, if you follow these leftist circles in Alberta, especially the more far left ones, this is like all they talk about. Like, this is the main thing they talk about. It's, oh, the UCP are destroying our healthcare system. Well, here's the thing. If it's so bad, then leave. Like, and this is why leftists in general, I just don't find genuine, and I don't even think they believe their own garbage. I just think that they've been lied to, and they've told the lie so many times that they believe it. It's that kind of scenario that um, if Alberta's way of running things is so bad, then just move. Because whenever you talk to a conservative, this is the argument they always bring up. And this is the way that you can tell that someone's genuine too. Like, if someone actually believes what they believe, they will always say, hey, if you don't like it, go have your own area where you run things the way you want. We'll have our area where we run things the way they want. The fact that the left, their only solution is to violently shove their way of thinking down your throat, and if you don't like it, they're going to throw you in jail or kick you out of the country. You are not genuine if you hold that belief. If you hold any political belief and it's not baked into your argument, the fact that you would say, hey, I think my way of running things is better. If you don't like it, you should go somewhere else and you can run it your way. And here's the thing too, like, Alberta is the most conservative province too, so wanting to turn, I mean, maybe Saskatchewan, but wanting to turn Alberta like far left, like these people, it's absolute insanity. Like, that's like me going to Vancouver and wanting to turn it into the most conservative city, or the GTA. Like, it's pure insanity, right? But this is what these people want to do. And why is it that these people want to do that? It's very simple. Their policies aren't the best, right? Like, a free market healthcare system absolutely destroys a public one. Like, it absolutely destroys it. Now, does that mean that we can't have a private option and a public option? Maybe. I think that's definitely better than what we have. The problem with these people, and the way that you know that they are not genuine, is they don't even want to have the option of a private option. Like, they don't even want it. Again, it's the same thing that goes with schools too. Like, the way that you can tell that public schools aren't better than charter or private schools, it's very simple. If they were better, they would want charter schools and private schools, because the public schools would simply outperform them. The private schools and the charter schools would go out of business, and you'd end up right back where we started with just public schools. And not only that, you would be able to point to anybody advocating for a private system the fact that, hey, we already tried that and it didn't work. But they never do that. They never do that because they know that public schools aren't as good, right? And the reason that they want it to stay this way is that public school teachers and the unions overwhelmingly donate and vote left. So that it's simply a political thing. Like, it's so obvious. And here's the thing too. Like, people think, oh, it's confusing. No, it's not confusing. I mean, there's some confusing aspects to it, but from a base level, it's incredibly simple. Like, it's not confusing. It's simply a political thing. Like, I don't get it. But anyway, that's the last thing I wanted to bring up. So if you like to, make sure you hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure you follow me on Twitter, BitChute, and Parler, but mainly Twitter. All those links are in the description, so you can find them all there.